to be here as a soundboard to give some advice about how it is that we can support each other as a community, as Muslims, as an ummah. So today's workshop, again, because I'm a teacher, it is designed, as a brother mentioned, as an interactive workshop. I'm not here to lecture, I'm here to share ideas with you. I'm here to also listen to what you have to say and try to provide some advice. Namely, there'll be 5 strategies that we hope that you'll walk away with today. 5 strategies that are very easy to implement. You'll start them today, inshallah, and inshallah you'll have a chance to work with them in the future as well. So let's begin.
Can we have those lights off so that we can see that?
These lights,
Front lights, so that we can see the screen.
Sure.
And it's that young adult stage that we sometimes have difficulty. So there's a constant flux of hormones, thoughts, belief systems, a lot of questioning. To give us an idea about what happens, why we're focusing on the teenage years and what happens to a teenager, I'm going to ask you a question. If your child was 8 years old and you said to them, don't smoke, would there be any argument? Whether our kids are younger and moving up towards that stage, or whether our kids are currently in that age, it's never too late to work with our kids. It's never too late to take these strategies and to work forward with them. So we're going to begin with a minds-on activity, meaning that we want to respect the fact that as adults and as parents and as community members, all of you have some prior knowledge. So we're going to ask you to, there's on the brother side here and the sister side in the back corner, there are some headings in terms of where kids might find pressures or peer pressures, whether academic, social, or emotional, financial pressures, and so on. I'm going to invite you to please take a marker from the bin here in the middle, that black box over there, and please take a moment to walk to these areas, these chart papers, and just write whatever comes to your mind about what you believe pressures might exist. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to work on that, please.
So brothers on this side and sisters on that side.
So just grab a marker, and feel free to walk around, so you have to actually stand up, I'm sorry. It's not a lecture.
Sorry guys, this is not
It's not a lecture, I'm a teacher. Okay, we're going to walk
get
around,
up
blood
and
moving,
move
we're going
and
to
do
fall
some
deep,
writing.
okay? So please stand up, feel free to grab some
I know
markers.
it's hard, but
Hopefully all this activity is for us to understand that peer pressure doesn't just happen in the classroom. It happens everywhere. It happens all the time. And for those of us who are not aware, the online pressure exists 24/7, 365 days a year. And that's very significant for us to understand, because that is a huge difference than the times that we have grown up, that I have grown up in this city, but I grew up in Scarborough, not too far from here, but having born and being raised here, that the pressures that existed before 1995 and after 1995 are different. We'll talk about that year later on. So I want to ask this question, what is peer pressure? To get our minds focused a bit more on what exactly we are talking about. So I'm going to put some statements up here. I'm going to ask you if they're true or false. So peer pressure is an actual ultimatum from friends during teen years. Think that's true? Anybody else? Sounds true. It's actually false. Peer pressures come from a desire to conform, and those pressures exist from the time that a child is actually born, from their young childhood. Okay? And you'll find that 90% of teens go around feeling that they're constantly being judged by their peers. Okay? So it doesn't just happen in the beginning, it happens continuously. It's the issue about conforming. Let's go to the next sentence. Peer pressure is an excuse for bad behavior. Some saying no, something true. Okay, it is false as well. Peer pressure does not relieve teens from responsibility. And that's very important for us to understand, is that, yes, we're talking about peer pressure, and sometimes parents might think, oh, it's okay, I know you did something wrong, but you're under pressure at school, you're pressure at home, pressure online, I get it. It's okay, you can keep doing the evil things, there's no problem. But this is what a lot of parents do. A lot of parents have such a big heart for their children, they feel empathy towards them, and they want to absolve them of their sinful actions, or their wrong or evil actions, or inappropriate actions, or inappropriate words, because they're under pressure. And kids will succumb to that, and they'll try and talk some sense into them. And this is often the excuse I'll get from kids, saying that I'm under a lot of pressure, this is why I swore at the teacher, this is why I got into a fight in the classroom, this is why I'm doing drugs, this is why I'm smoking in the hallway. But that's not an excuse. Right? So peer pressure is not an excuse, it is still, kids are still responsible for what they're doing in life. Peer pressure only comes from friends. False, right? I think the activity we did here earlier shows clearly that it does not just come from friends. It can come from a variety of sources, including our family, our parents, the community, teachers, school, online, anywhere. Peer pressure is a way for kids to feel like they fit in. We often feel this way, right? But actually it's false. When kids use peer pressure as an excuse to fit in, what they're actually doing is giving up their own individuality. It actually affects their identity, right? So before high school, maybe they were a good little kid at home and they didn't swear and they didn't watch these bad shows. But now they come to high school, they think, oh, I gotta watch Pretty Little Liars. I have to watch 13 Reasons Why. Because if I don't, people at school they'll think I'm not cool, right? And they start using bad language or foul language, and they use that as an excuse, right? They use that as an excuse, but in reality, what it's doing is deteriorating their own identity, right? Stealing from their own who they actually really are. And that is one of the major reasons, the attack on one's own identity, is one of the major reasons that anxiety starts developing in our young ones. Peer pressure is always negative. False. So peer pressure can definitely be positive as well, along with some encouragement and motivation to go with it. Okay, so let's take a moment to define peer pressure. So on your worksheet, the first question is define peer pressure. I'll give you just 30 seconds to come up with the definition based on what we just talked about so far.
Brothers and sisters, we need your input on this, so please take 30 seconds to write some answer.
For those who don't have the worksheets, they're here at the front, the clipboards are here, pens are here. I would really encourage everyone to actually participate. If you don't have this worksheet, you can use your phone to make notes. The reason it's important to participate is because the more you put into something, the more you're going to get out of it, right? Same with our salah, the more khushu we put into our salah, the more we benefit from it. The same thing with the workshop, the more we put into it, the more we'll go home with, inshallah.
And there are extra sheets if anybody wants them, they have them at the front. We just don't have clipboards to open.
So if anybody would like some more sheets, they're here at the front. Okay, so let's go through the definition of peer pressure. Anybody want to hazard a guess or give us a definition of what you come up with so far? Thank you.
Makes you lose their identity and it increases their anxiety.
So increases anxiety, builds up, robs you of your identity, and causes you to want to conform. Good summary of what we talked about so far. Jazakallah khairan. It can definitely make you feel down. So definitely influence from one peer's groups to help them to actually want them to conform. Doesn't mean I have just a couple minutes left. Okay, so now there's just so we're aware that there are two types, and that is about being direct and indirect peer pressure as well. Direct, of course, being someone telling another person, one teenager telling another teenager, you suck, you need to start dressing more properly. Or purple is ugly on you, it's not the cool color anymore, it's not wearing green. Right? That's direct peer pressure. Okay? Indirect pressures are comments that are made where we ourselves don't even realize it. And here's an example of how we as parents we might actually put indirect pressure on our own kids. We might go to someone's house and we may say, oh look at Abdullah, he's so smart, he's definitely going to medical school. Now our kids are thinking, what about me? Am I not smart? Do my parents not like me? My parents have no confidence in me either? So this is one of the issues of indirect pressure. And definitely when it comes to peer pressure, it's about changing the attitudes and values and causing people to conform, as the sister has mentioned, about conformity towards causing a person to want to become exactly like a group or an individual. So in this situation, there's a lot of invisible barriers that we're not always aware of. So when students actually come to high school, whether it's a private Islamic school, a private school, or a public school, or a Catholic school for that matter, there are a lot of invisible barriers that teenagers themselves are not aware of, and even parents themselves are not necessarily aware of as well. Does anybody want to guess what is one of the invisible barriers that someone might face? Our kids? Because there's something that we're hiding from our friends. Yeah, so what might they hide from their friends?
Like about your parents, you show them who they are because they are not different.
Okay, thank you. So appearance. So wearing the hijab, wearing a kufi on the head, maybe the way a person is dressed, they dress more modestly, whether male or female. Absolutely, that's one invisible barrier. And you alluded to as well, parents. Sometimes having strict parents can also be an invisible barrier. Something that kids don't want to share. So they come to school and they act like they are part of the crowd, but in reality when they go home, they're not. Right? So they start to live what's called a dichotomous lifestyle. They live one way at home, they live another way at school. They talk one way at home and they talk a different way at school. They dress one way at home and they dress differently at school. Right? So this is what the danger is that happens when kids start getting into conformity.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, when I first came across the peer pressure deal, I thought to myself, it's strange that we as Muslims don't seem to have directions about how we deal with this. Because remember all this stuff, and I respect Brother Umar's work because he's done it obviously, and he's shown you that he's been doing guidance counseling for years. But you know, I have a 29-year-old and I have a 26-year-old. And I didn't have access to this info. But I did have access to the info that's right in front of you. All of us have access to this. Look at what the Quran is saying. Everybody has read Surah Luqman. Yes? Inshallah. Raise your hands even if you haven't. It creates an intention, right? Allah Ta'ala, innamal a'mal binniyat, right? You get reward right away. If you intend reading, you got reward right away. Let's not go away without reward. Inshallah, coming here is reward already, or we want to multiply. Look at what the Quran is saying. Surah Luqman, sisters and brothers, if you have not studied the methodology and the paradigms that Allah Ta'ala is giving, who's Luqman? He's actually a sage, he's not a prophet. By all definitions, he's not a prophet. But the beauty of the advice that he shares with his brother, with his son, is look at it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنِيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. The first thing that's introduced in a child's life is what Allah Ta'ala expects us to have before we introduce any other concept. Because you know all this pressure is coming because you are trying to confine to human paradigms. You are taking directions from human beings. But here, Luqman is saying, no my son, the first thing you have to know is you take direction from Allah. That has to be introduced into the child's life. I don't care how old the kid is. You can introduce it at 20, you can introduce it at 25. It doesn't change. When you and me ask somebody to accept Islam, we don't talk about anything except Allah. Oneness of Allah. So I want you to, inshallah, leave you with this. Mention when Luqman said to his son while he was instructing him, don't associate. Association is great injustice. Next slide, go ahead. And this is the other one. Developing concepts in our children. What are we trying to show them? Why is it that we're talking about this? Luqman says, يَا بُنَيَّ إِنَّهَا إِن تَكُ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِّن خَرْدَلٍ فَتَكُنْ فِي صَخْرَةٍ أَوْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ أَوْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَأْتِ بِهَا اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَطِيفٌ خَبِيرٌ. It's not just the fact that Allah is Wahid. Allah is also Qahhar. Allah is also Jabbar. Allah is also Kareem. Allah is also Mateen. You and me need to talk about Allah with kids. You'd be amazed. We do the maktab here in the evening. How many kids actually don't know who Allah is? They heard the word. They know, they use this in their salah, but they actually don't know who Allah is. And I would challenge most of us, if we were asked who Allah is, most of us would come up with something made up. We haven't really studied Allah's Isma wa Husna. And I'm not blaming anybody, I'm starting with myself. This is how I learned. So I strongly suggest that before we start talking about stuff, we declare that Allah has the absolute right to be obeyed. So that concept sits into the child's mind when you talk about the things that you're going to bring in from saying, why are you under pressure from your parents? From your friends. Why are you under pressure of any kind? Look, you and me should know Allah Ta'ala is aware of everything you're doing. So if you are maybe fooling your parents, realize you're not fooling Allah. I hope that this is something we can drive into ourselves to say, first, believe it ourselves before we make others believe. Like Allah, let Umar continue.
So this time we're going to have a chance to revisit the first activity that we did in our minds on. On your worksheet, number 2 is there's a chart there which asks you to choose 5 pressures and then to gauge the impact of those pressures in the life of your own children. Okay? So I'm going to invite you can actually go back to the chart papers we filled in earlier. You can reread them if you like. And look for 5 pressures you believe your children are experiencing. Please write them down in the column on the left. And then ask yourself the question, what is the impact that each of those pressures is having in their life? Does that make sense? You understand? Okay. I'll give you a few minutes to work on that and then we'll take it up, inshallah. Is competition on the field, on the soccer field. right, on the football field or on the basketball. That might be a pressure that they feel competition, and they might not feel adequate. So the impact is that they withdraw and they stop doing sports altogether. Right, so that's an example of what you might put on your chart. That's the impact. In the life of your child. Now the question is, how can you take that pressure or that impact and give it a positive spin? So take a moment to look at what you've written down in terms of the impact, the negative impact really, and how can you turn that around? What can you do to make that impact positive? So you can review the pressure and ask yourself the question, what can you do as a parent to make that a positive interaction? Okay. Thank you. So one of the ways of doing that is on a daily basis, every single day, not once a week, but every single day, take some time to debrief with your child, right? Ask them what happened that day. And when things do come up, don't hesitate, don't wait until the end of the week or the end of the day. And as soon as something occurs, take time out of your own personal life to actually spend time with them and have a discussion. So that would be the most important and the most easiest way that we can take a negative impact and turn it into a positive. Because at the very least, it encourages discussion. It encourages a sharing of ideas. See, the one thing that we have that our children don't have, we'll go back to that same question asked earlier, is if we ask our 14-year-old child, we say to them, don't smoke, and they say, why? If someone asks an adult, 30 years old, 35 years old, don't smoke, are they going to ask why? Why not? Because they've already asked. And if they've already asked, they've already what? Answered. So the difference between parent and child is years of experience, nothing else. A teenager thinks exactly the same way an adult does. But they're immature in their experience. And that's why they have difficulty in those 4 or 5 years of teenage years. So when we have those discussions and we open the doors to sharing ideas, we are sharing in those moments our experiences that we've had in our own lives with those same pressures as well. Is there anything else we can think about? How do you take something negative in terms of impact and make it positive?
For example, I doesn't have to take the love of the eye and you go out and you go someone and that's makes them alone.
Thank you. So the second most important element is to understand that when our teenagers go through a negative experience, have negative peer pressures, oftentimes they're going to hide, as someone mentioned earlier. They're not going to come out and share with us. Sometimes because they're shy, maybe they're embarrassed, maybe they feel that their parent might judge them. So the second most important element that we can do as parents is be present. Be available for them. Even if we don't say a word. If they're watching TV, sit next to them. When they're eating something, sit next to them. If they're doing homework, sit next to them. They want to go outside, shoot a few hoops, or go for a walk, or go for a run, or they want to go to the mall, go with them. Be present. Just by being present in the moment, an opportunity may open up where they actually might want to share with us. Or we, through our presence, can initiate a conversation that can bring something out. Right? Imagine sitting with your child and saying, you know, you're in grade 9 this year. I remember when I was in grade 9. I remember such and such and such. You can definitely open up some of the conversations. And we'll explore some of these strategies shortly.
It's also building trust, I would
Definitely. So building trust, opening doors of communication through our presence and through those conversations. Thank you.
So they might say, why you are so nosy? Why you
You know what? We'll come back to that, shall we?
Actually, that's an excellent question. That's why you need to talk. Right? You now need to introduce the idea, guys, we're not just dealing with one aspect of life, right? If you've talked about Allah, inevitably you've talked about the concept of Al-Akhirah. You'll be amazed how few parents actually talk to their kids about accountability. Accountability is the key factor. Kids have seen their own accountability. It's not a unique concept, right? Every child has been through a test. Me and you have been through a test.
Might be a driving test. It might be a test when you go, I don't know, but I've all been through a test. It's not such a unique idea. All you're saying to your child is, guys, gals, you have a choice in whatever you're doing. You always have a choice. I am perhaps, like Brother Omar said, experienced, but I'm not going to stand in front of Allah when you show up. This is what's going to happen. You will find that people who advised you wrongly, badly, who you thought were friends, they will become your enemies. Don't worry if the kid doesn't accept it. I'm not worried about acceptance. I'm concerned about information. Information, right? When people speed on the 401, it's not because they don't have information, it's because they're making a choice. And this is really where the son and the daughter needs to see. You will find that people who are not righteous, who are not doing things that are contiguous with God's plan, they will actually be your enemies. Don't worry about acceptance. Like I said, I'm not worried, and you shouldn't be worried about acceptance. It's not about acceptance. It's about information. And the Prophet ﷺ, this is where, again, if you are not introducing the life of the Prophet ﷺ as a role model, huge mistake. Huge mistake. Talk about it. He needs to be, ﷺ, a part of our dinner conversation. People often find it very strange, but I introduce it in a manner where it almost looks like a wise friend. You've got a friend. Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a friend. Why? Because he's giving you the best advice possible. After Allah, Muhammad, peace be upon him, is our actual role model. So what does he do? He clearly says, you will be identified with the people that you're associated with. So if your friends are doing drugs, if your friends are going to parties, if your friends are disrespectful to your parents, to their parents, there is a problem. And this needs to be given to the kids in the politest way. I don't mean to sound this like a lecture at all. That's what I'm saying, as Brother Omar already said. If you talk with your kids, if you talk with your son and your daughter, it's not that hard to introduce the concept. It's not. You don't need to talk about this for 5 hours. You need to say during the dinner conversation, this is really what you can expect to find, that your friends actually decide who you are. So if they're not doing Salat al-Zuhr, they're not doing the afternoon prayer at school, you know what? Neither do you. Jazakallah.
So let's move on to ask ourselves this question. How does social anxiety affect our teens? So the third question on your worksheet is, how is social pressure different than peer pressure? And this is a relatively new concept that has become unearthed really since 2008. Right? So really in the last 9 years, this has become the big problem. We're talking less and less about peer pressure and talking more and more about social anxiety and social pressure. So I'm going to ask the question out loud. What do you think the difference is between peer pressure and social pressure or social anxiety?
Social anxiety is when they are in the crowd or when there is somebody.
So I'm going to ask you to repeat it, please.
Social anxiety is something that the kids get anxious and nervous when they are around people.
So social anxiety is an issue regarding when you're around other people, you might feel some sense of anxiety coming over you in a social setting. Anything else? What might be the difference between peer pressure and social pressure? Social pressure actually happens online, right? Social pressure originates online. It then follows the child into school the following day and throughout the entire day. So that's why I mentioned 2008. Does anybody know what happened in 2008? Smartphone. That's what happened in 2008. Access to the internet, access to your friends and your peers, not just once in the morning or once in class or once at lunchtime, but 24/7, 365 days a year, right? All year long, all the day long. And that's why you have kids who already had, for those who have kids who are a bit older, it was already tough enough getting teenagers to go to sleep by a certain hour. Now, they're on their phones 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they have to be, because they might miss something. And they might show up to school the next day and some action happened at 2 o'clock in the morning and they weren't around for it. Right? And then they feel behind or they feel out of the loop the whole day long. So this is one of the areas of social anxieties that can creep into a person's life. It used to be when we were growing up that if you didn't watch a certain show the night before, you might feel socially awkward the following day because it's the show that everybody watches. Now it's about what's happening online, when people are watching or reading or sharing online. So this is definitely one of the difficult areas that affect social standing of our teens. I'll move back over to Dr. Zihan.
One of the best things I think is to teach your kids to be different is to be smart. So one of the reasons I believe things happen like this, as the brother Umar mentioned earlier, I've seen girls who change from niqab into an unbelievable attire. Unbelievable attire. It happened in Tim Hortons. Their mom and dad have no idea. They have no idea what this daughter of theirs or their son is doing. Why? Because we haven't taught them. We haven't explained what it is. There are rules, guys. We play by the rules. We don't just introduce the idea of Allah, we don't introduce the idea of the last day, and that's the end of it. What does it all mean? What does it mean? Imagine if Canada Revenue said, we will come after you, but we're not going to tell you why. You have no idea what they are coming after you. We are being told modesty actually defines you. Don't be shy of being different. The go with the flow idea doesn't work with Muslims. We should never want to fit in with the crowd if it's against. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said, there is no disobedience of the Khaliq and the obedience of the makhluk, of the creator. So I introduced the idea, again, it's coming from the Quran. First of all, define success for your children. For a lot of our children, success is a successful career, a big house, lots of money in the bank, a beautiful spouse. That's where success ends for a lot of us. And we haven't introduced the idea that success is really Surah Al-Mu'minun, right? Allah Ta'ala is saying, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي. Allah Ta'ala is actually introducing the idea of success. If our children never know